Another interesting surprise occurred last week, showing some differences of opinion. The School Superintendents Association surprised a lot of people by stating last week that the school accountability process, which has been a debate in Florida going back to Jeb Bush's time as governor, that process in its current iteration is not valid. And that really did shock a lot of people.
It was a pretty remarkable statement the Florida Association of District School Superintendents put out Friday afternoon. Basically, they said they had lost confidence in the school accountability system. As you mentioned, the debate about school accountability goes back to when Jeb Bush was elected, really, in 1998. And the Republicans have always, seen that as a sort of foundation, if you will, of this public school system, and they still do. But there's been a lot of turmoil over the last year related to this accountability system, and the superintendents basically said we've lost confidence, the public has lost confidence in it, and that the results of the tests that were administered to students in the spring of 2015, this past spring, should be suspended, that they should not be used. That's how little confidence the superintendents have in this.
And that was despite the fact that the legislature commissioned a study as to whether or not that process was valid, right, in 2015.
There was a lot of turmoil about this during the legislative session, and the legislature made some changes in the testing, but they also said, we need to do a study of this, have a valid study to see whether the test that was administered is valid. And the results came back around the beginning of September, and the Department of Education immediately grabbed onto that study and said, look, this shows the test is valid. Immediately, there were some doubts raised by groups like the superintendents. And then last week, Education Commissioner Pam Stewart met with the District School Superintendents Association down in Tampa. Apparently, she didn't convince them, because afterwards, they issued this statement that said, we don't have confidence in this. Now, how all this plays out is a little bit speculative at this point. For one thing, the legislature seems to be ready to move on. So if that's the case, there probably won't be any great changes in the accountability system, because the Department of Education has pretty much already said, hey, look at this study. It's the standards and the accountability system is valid. So if that's what happens, it will just move on despite these protests.
On the other hand, there's a gentleman who's I think, executive director or president of the Florida School Superintendents Association, who happens also to be a very influential senator named Bill Montford. Although he's a Democrat, he is very respected by both Republicans and Democrats for his knowledge in this area. And he's got to be sensitive to the fact that his association doesn't agree that this process is valid. So he'll have a say, won't he?
Well, he does wear two hats. He's the head of this association, he's a senator. But he is listened to in the Senate on education issues. He is a former school superintendent, a former school principal. So, and also he's a moderate Democrat, North Florida Democrat. He, if you will, he plays ball with Republicans on certain issues. They like him, they listen to him. And he's got a lot of on-the-ground experience about education issues. So I expect to see Senator Montford pushing this issue through next year's session, trying to keep these questions about the accountability system front and center and trying to make some changes. The test won't be administered again until the spring, so there is time if they want to do it. The question is whether, in my mind at least, is whether the legislative leadership will say, we're fine, let's move on, or whether the superintendents, teachers unions, those groups have always been very critical of the accountability system. But the superintendents, for them, many of whom are in political positions, to come out this bluntly made another statement of a different type.
Thanks, Jim. For more news about Florida politics and government, visit the Advances section of our website.